Hello sports fans, I'm Harry and welcome to Harry's Stuff and Such. And today I'm going to be upgrading my wife's 15 plus year computer to these new components. So stick around and see what happens. And welcome back. As I said in the intro, I plan on upgrading my wife's computer. Sitting over here was a 15-year plus computer. Originally this computer, I believe, had a Core 2 Dual in it, running Windows XP. A few years after that, I don't know, 5-6 years after that, I replaced it with an AMD Phenom AM3 Plus ASRock motherboard. But now I'm about to upgrade it again, and I thought I'd show you how I do that. First thing, I talk about the components. I'm going to be putting in a AMD Ryzen 5 2400G, so that it has the onboard video. I'm going to be installing it on a Asus ROG Stix 8350F gaming motherboard. And then I'll be placing in a Crucible MX 500 solid state drive, 1 terabyte, and 16 gigs worth of G.Skill Triton Z RGB memory. And I may or may not be using this case. This is originally an Antec case. I may move it over to, I have a Cooler Master Cosmos, original Cosmos, that I'm not using at the moment. That's an old Windows Vista board in it right now, which I'm probably just planning on discarding since it's not being used anymore. Listen, because I'm not sure that the power supply in this is compatible with this board. I know that the Cooler Master power supply that's in the other is compatible. So let's get to it. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the motherboard first. And like I said, we got the ROG Strix. You might notice that I'm wearing gloves. These are latex gloves. I just like wearing gloves so that I don't get wool from my fingers on the items that I'm electronic items that I'm looking at. You'll need to be somewhat careful. Make sure you don't have any static buildup whenever you're touching electronic components. Looks like a very nice motherboard. Plenty of RAM. I'm going to be using 2 of the slots because I'm only putting in 2 8 gig sticks, so I'll have 16 gigabytes. So that's looking pretty good. Looks like a good motherboard. Looking forward to using this in her computer. It won't be mine, but it'll be, I think she'll enjoy the improvement. Alright, what else is in the box? Let's see. Cables, back plate, coaster. Looks like a small screw, 2 small screws, not quite sure what those are for yet. Some zip ties are included. Of course, you have the manual and CD, driver CD. It looks like some colorful stickers, just a little specification updates for AMD processors. Alright, there's the manual, there's the back plate. Okay, so the CD has got some of the Asus software as well as some of the drivers, multi-language installation guide, and you have your instructions manual. Okay. All right. Well, Let's set that aside. One moment. And let's take a look at what's in the box. This is the Ryzen 5. Okay, so there's the actual Ryzen. The CPU is in this box. And the rest of this is the heatsink and cooling fan, which I'm not going to be using the stock anyways. I'm going to be reusing a Noctua cooling fan that I had in another computer, and so I'm just going to reuse that. But if you're interested in what the stock one looks like, there it is. That's the stock. So it already has the thermal compound applied to the back. So it's kind of a lot lower profile. I'm sure a little more noisy than what my Noctua will be. So here's the heart, the AMD Ryzen 5 2400G. Okay, before I could get started putting the CPU on, I had to replace the stock CPU retention brackets. These are the stock ones here. It's because I'm putting in an older Noctua CPU cooler. In fact, I think I bought it back in 2013 or 2014. It's NH U12S. This is the cooler. It comes with one fan. I bought a second 120 millimeter fan, and I was using it in a different computer set. So in order to use this, I have to put on these brackets, and that's because I'll be mounting it in this fashion. You could mount it in this fashion, but I think it would interfere with the memory slots. And in order to get mounted on this AMD board and this CPU, I had to order an adapter kit from Noctua. It's the NM-AM4 adapter kit, and it's about $8. I got it off of Amazon. But the newer Noctua CPU coolers, I believe the DH14, DH15, and the S version of both those already fit this type of AM4. So you don't have to buy the adapter. Fortunately, Noctua had an adapter for an older cooler, and this cooler fits this CPU just perfectly. So now I'm going to go ahead and put the CPU to the board. And to do that, you pull up the little bracket handle there. I'm not sure if you can notice, but there's a little gold triangle on this corner. And there's a little triangle on this corner of the slot that it fits into. So you match those up. He said with confidence there. And it drops in place. And then you close the bracket. And now it's ready for the CPU cooler. Now, AMD includes some CPU cooling patch, but I don't like using the stock ones. What I usually use is some sort of form of Arctic Silver. There's some others over here you can use. Here's Thermal Grizzly. That's good, but there's quite a few out there. Some people like to even use liquid metal. I haven't used liquid metal, so I can't attest to that. But I like the Arctic Silver, and the Thermal Grizzly works great. Alright, but before I apply anything, I like to cool both the heat spreader on the CPU as well as the bottom of my CPU cooler with a little IPA, isopropyl alcohol. it dries quickly, but to make sure that there's no residual oils or anything that won't interfere with the seating and the cooling. It's just a good practice to do that. And make sure that it's good and dry. It is. Let's see if I get any thermal grizzly left. I think I have another bottle if I don't have enough. But we'll try and see. And you'll see multiple ways of installing the thermal compound. Some just put a big glob in the middle. Some do the X's like I have. Alright, so a little more thermal compound. And it's not necessary, but one thing I like to do is I got a little spatula a little plastic spatula, and I just like to kind of smooth the thermal compound out. It's not really necessary. So as you can see, I've kind of evenly spread the heat sink compound evenly over the top of the heat spreader. Again, that's not necessary. Some people just put a big old glob in the center and then you press down and it will spread out. I just like doing it, spreading it out a little bit and smoothing it out. Just my preference. Next, I'm going to go ahead and install the CPU cooler, because it's easier for me to install it and then put the board in as opposed to install it after I put the board in. So now the CPU headers are over here, or fan headers are over here on this side of the board, so that's why I've got the wires for the CPU fans on this side. And again, I've mounted it in this orientation instead of this orientation because I think this orientation is going to interfere with the memory slots, and so that's why I just chose to mount it in this manner. Although I probably ought to take the fans off so that I can get to the screws and I can put those back on after the fact. There. Alright, so now I can get to the screws. Okay, you try to get about as close as you can determine. Same amount of tension on both sides. You don't want too much because you don't want to break the board. So now what I'll do next is I'll go ahead and put the memory in, and then I'll put the fans back on here, and then I'll be ready to install it into the motherboard or the case. So I'm ready to install the memory, and again I got some Trident Z RGB G.Skill DDR4 memory. Alright, so I'm ready to install the memory, and since I'm only going to be using 2 instead of 4, you put them in the second and fourth slot when you're doing 2. If you're doing 1, you put it in the second slot. If you're doing 2, the second and fourth slot. And of course, if you're doing 4, you put it in all 4 slots. So that's where I'll be doing is 2. And you can only install it one manner, one way. And then you push down until this retention ring snaps in place, like so. Now we have the memory installed. I've got the cooler installed, and now I'm going to reattach the fans to the cooler, and then I'll put it in the case. Now with the fans reattached to I'm going to go ahead and attach the cooling fan headers or plugs to the CPU cooling fan headers on the motherboard. And I've routed the wires in such a case that there very little interference with airflow in the case. So now I'm ready to put it in the case. As you can see, I now have the motherboard inside the Cosmos, Cooler Master Cosmos case. This is an older case that I had another build in which I just removed all the components. I already had a 750 watt power supply in, and I just used the same power supply. I've still got some cable management to clean up, but it had some old components in here that I'm going to keep. I've got 2 DVD players in this that I'm going to keep, and there's several hard drives, but I was replacing the boot drive with this, like I mentioned before, this Crucible 500M, I believe it's the M500X or MX500. It's a terabyte SSD. It's a 2.5 inch drive instead of the 3-inch drive. The carriage in the Cosmos had set up for 3-inch drives like this, and didn't have a spot to install a 2.5 inch drive, so I went on to Thingiverse and downloaded this adapter, 3.5 inch, 2.5 inch adapter, so that I could place it. So it was nice to have my 3D printer so I could print a part for the SSD. So now all I got to do is get the SSD hooked up, put everything back together, fix up the cables a little bit, and then load the OS. So let's get started doing that. Alright, so I've got the computer together now. One thing I had to do that I didn't anticipate was I needed to have a PCI card in the slot here. This is an NVIDIA video card, an extra one I had laying around. I believe it may be a 760. But without this plugged into the PCI Express slot, the motherboard would not post. Once I plugged this in, even though I'm not using the graphics card, it wouldn't post, but once I plugged it in, it would post. Not sure why. Anyways, we'll go ahead and install the OS, and we'll go on from there. And there you have it. I've completed the upgrade to my wife's computer. I wound up using my Cooler Master Cosmos. This is an original Cosmo case. It had an old computer in it, and I just salvaged the board and the power supply. It had a 750 watt Cooler Master. I believe it was Cooler Master, maybe a Corsair power supply, and I just used that power supply. So I used like I said, the ROG Strix Asus gaming motherboard, the B350F, as well as a AMD Ryzen 5 2400G, and some 16 gigabyte of G.Skill Trident DDR4 3000 memory, as well as a Crucible MX500 1 terabyte SSD. So that completes her upgrade. I installed Windows 10 Pro. Everything is working. It boots up great. She's very happy with it. Like I said, there was that one oddity. The only way I could get the motherboard to post was to put a PCI Express video card, which I had extras laying around. I believe it was a EVGA 760 NVIDIA card I had, so I just stuck that in, and it posted. Then I updated the BIOS, installed Windows, and then it would post without the video card installed, but it would not power off when you did a shutdown. It would only do a power off from a shutdown with the video card installed, even though it's not being used. Even though the 2400G has the onboard graphics, and I have that set in the BIOS, and that's what I'm using. I'm not using the video card. Don't even have the drivers installed, so I'm not quite sure what's up with that. I'll just have to do some more investigation. Like I said, I flashed the Asus motherboard with the most recent BIOS, so I know that that's up to date and it should be working with the 2400G. Not quite sure why. Maybe someone out there knows and they can leave a comment in the comment section. But I'll just follow up with some investigation and figure it out if not. Anyways, if you liked this video, hey, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't, give me a thumbs down. But either way, why don't you leave a comment as why you did or did not like it, what I can do to improve, what maybe you'd like to see me do. I plan on doing some more computer upgrades. I'm getting ready to do a major computer build for myself, water cooling and so forth and so on. And I'll try to post that at the time that I get started doing it. So until then, why don't you press that subscribe button and you'll keep up with what's going on with Harry's stuff and such. There's no telling what I'll be doing. I just grab something that I happen to like and I throw it up there. If you've got something you'd like to see me do, leave me a comment and maybe I can get to it and maybe I can't. Either way, I'll respond and let you know where I'm at with that. So anyways, like I said, press that subscribe button. Come on, come on. Anyways, guys, you take care, and I'll catch y'all all on the backside.